Welcome to episode 3 of the Intolerance of Tolerance podcast. I'm here with a pair of twins from Boston University. They are freshmen. So, twins, if you could please introduce yourselves.
Hi, we're twins that are from Long Island, New York, and we're studying at BU.
Do you guys feel comfortable saying what you are planning on studying or what you are studying right now?
We are in the liberal arts program. We're planning on studying in Questrom in the near future.
Awesome. Okay, so if you guys can please kind of talk about the extent of your experiences with political bias from your professors at BU.
As of now, really, we haven't had any grade issues or anything of that nature, but definitely in almost all of our classes, professors have made backhanded comments about more presidents and political figures more on the right. Definitely, they have been speaking at length about issues that really do not pertain to the classroom and things of that nature. But just to be clear, we have not had any grade issues, nothing of that nature.
Right. Um, can you give some examples if you have any?
Yes. For example, at orientation, one of the high level faculty at Boston University said that we with the new administration, we now left 4 years of darkness, which really doesn't belong in an orientation full of alumni, prospective students, and students currently. And that was just one example that was really shocking, in my opinion.
Right. Do you which issues do you find to be like the hot topic ones for you guys that you feel are most either talked about in the classroom or that professors kind of express the most bias towards?
Um, I feel like we can't go a single day without speaking about racism in every single one of my classes, and it's an issue that we face nowadays. But if you bring it up every day, you can't learn in the classroom anymore because the professors have to be very, very careful to make sure everyone's included and things like that. So I feel like that's a huge problem.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, just one more. We speak at length, especially in our liberal arts history classes, about America just as a generally bad country. They don't compare it to any other countries that are definitely worse, but they just say America is a bad country because of several reasons. And we also dissect, which might be a good thing, but in general, we do it a little bit too much, where we dissect our traditional American views about just other like African countries and stuff like that.
Right. I think that specifically with the issue of racism that you brought up, of course, it's something that is experienced even today, unfortunately, and it's a huge issue that should be talked about, but it's it's one that I feel like has become trivialized in our society just because it's so the word is thrown around so much that it's kind of hard to have a very substantial and nuanced conversation about it that really kind of expresses its true meaning. So I think that that's kind of the issue with racism constantly being talked about in the classroom, because I don't think that the conversations surrounding it are truly substantial. And then, yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you guys are saying, and it's hard. Were you expecting this when you came to BU?
Honestly, we were because we we heard from some friends in college already that there was just a lot of this like there was a lot of this like pushiness and stuff like that in classrooms, but I didn't really expect that they would be so just blatant about it. And it's constant, it does not end. It's every single class we have to talk about it. And especially in one specific class that I'm thinking of, uh the professor's a very nice person, of course. I don't think he means it, but every time like we're learning about, let's say for example, like racism in America, like traditional the 60s racism and stuff like that, he always brings up like he likes to say, the Asian students, what do you guys think about this? Did they teach you this in school and stuff like that?
Oh,
So
wow.
what I feel is that first of all, I can tell from the way that the kids respond is that they don't like to be called like that. They don't like international students to be like pushed away and stuff like that. Why can't they just be Americans like us? There's really no.
Right.
But that's personally what I think is that I say whenever I speak to people about it, that they're treated sort of like zoo animals, that people can just look at them and not really appreciate them for who they really are.
Yeah, that's really sad. I don't think it's right to kind of play identity politics like that. Like I know of a bunch of like Jewish students, for example, that are always kind of tokenized in the classroom. And they're like, "Oh, what do you think as a Jew?" Like it's very weird. Like you don't want to be identified in that way if just because like you're somehow the all-knowing opinion for that specific ethnic, racial, or religious group.
Definitely.
Yeah. So are you guys outspoken about your beliefs?
I think to an extent, it depends. It depends who we're around, because if we believe, and we're not speaking about politics here, right or left, we're speaking about more generally. With professors, with regard, we realize that it's not worth jeopardizing our grade. So we also come from a Jewish background, both of us, and we don't really speak about religion also in the classroom, because it's a private thing that's no one else's business but yourself, who you worship and what you believe. So we try to keep it very, very low key in the classroom and things like that, even outside the classroom, because we don't know who we're speaking to. We don't know where they stand on issues. We don't know what religion they are. So it's better just to keep these two big, big things in life outside of friendships and relationships in college.
Unless you know them well enough to feel comfortable speaking to them about it. But yeah, generally that's what we learned. We definitely did make mistakes. This is something brand new to us. But yeah, it was a little bit shocking because we come from a little bit of a like a bubble, and we didn't really know that people actually believed in stuff that just differed from us a little bit. With religion, especially in these liberal arts classes, we had a unit in one of our classes where we had to read a lot of the religious foundational documents for different religions, only the Abrahamic ones though. And there was a lot of, I wouldn't call it bias, but it was more just a hyper awareness of the faults of Judaism. And then just when we were reading the Christian and when we were reading the Bible and the Quran, there was no mention of anything. The teacher was so fixated on the singularity of the Islamic God, yet did not mention at all that the Jews also believed in a singular God. It's more, I don't even know if it's on purpose. I think it's just more of like, in general, that's just how they act. I can't even explain it.
No, that makes sense. And I have a couple of questions based off of what you just said. So the first would be you're saying that you are apprehensive to be outspoken about your beliefs because you don't want it to affect your grades. But my question is, if you've never experienced grade discrimination based on your political beliefs, then how are you, then what's your basis for not expressing your beliefs because you're afraid of grade discrimination?
Um, because everyone should feel okay to be able to say what they believe in the classroom. The classroom's supposed to be a safe space where there's no bias with regard to teachers, other students, and every single student and teacher should be able to hear the other students and even the professor state what they believe in. But unfortunately, nowadays it's become more of a thing that if you do not agree with the things that the professor believes in, you cannot speak about it, because then the professor looks at you like you're some crazy person, and it's not worth it.
It's
It's not worth the risk.
it's more also, just as he was saying, it's also more of a, if you believe that you like apples and I believe that I like oranges, that's not really something major. That's whatever. But a lot of people on other sides of the political aisle, and it's on both sides, they believe the others are horrible human beings that don't deserve to be able to speak their minds. So we just don't want to be put in any, God forbid, uncomfortable position either way, where if the professor just does not agree with our views, we don't want to be put in a position where, God forbid, he can give us a bad grade. And then what are we going to do? We're powerless here. It's more
Right.
just, it's more, yeah, it's like, just to directly answer, it's more of just us being 15 times removed from the situation than us saying it never happened. So why don't we try it?
Right. I hear that. I definitely, I mean, I get that. Like, I'm trying to kind of, I guess, help people who aren't either conservatives or who haven't experienced political bias from their professors kind of understand our perspective. And a lot of the times I get the question of like, okay, well, if you've never experienced it, then how do you know that it would happen? And, it's human nature. I talked about this on a different episode with a different person I was interviewing. And it's just human nature that it was something, like you said, that's so emotional and people are so connected to it on such a deep level where they feel that the other side is completely immoral, then there's a very high chance that there are going to be extreme repercussions, especially in this professor student power dynamic. Going to your Jewish background. So, how do you feel the relationship between political bias and anti-Semitism or anti-Israel sentiments? How do those all fit together? Because I feel like the lines are very blurred sometimes. So I guess if you can speak on your experience with that.
With regard to Israel, our classes haven't really been there because we're more in humanities and things like that. So they don't really speak about Israel so much, but I can guarantee you that if Israel would come up in conversation, many of the students and even the professor would probably go against Israel just because of where they're standing on other issues. But at the same time, me being a Jew, I feel like nowadays, especially with all of the freedom and all of like the people saying that they cannot observe fully in college and things like that, the professors are doing a very good job with, if it's the Sabbath, like we're able to get extended time, or if it's Passover, then we asked our professor for like a few days extension because we couldn't do work for like 6 days, and he allowed it, and they all allowed it, and no problems asked. My advisor said it's okay if I cut the meeting a little bit short with her because of the Sabbath. So I feel like in that regard, it's a very good thing.
Just one quick comment. I know that I was expecting the Israel bias more than any other bias whenever I came to college. Thank God, really, I haven't really experienced it to the full extent that you like see in the movies and they prepare you for. But like, for example, in one of my classes, the teacher asked a question about like which nation state is violent towards its citizens, and someone in the chat put in Israel. That's really like that's to the extent of what, and obviously they're wrong. That's the thing. Like, they're just uneducated in this topic. But really, like, our professors also haven't mentioned it. Actually, I did a project on Israel, and one specific professor said it's a beautiful country that I've always wanted to visit. So really, they might stay away from the political problems with it or the political discussions. But as of now, we really haven't experienced it. But also, we've been here for a couple of months. So it's possible it'll come in the future and in different departments.
Right. Um, and this semester was your first semester at BU?
Yes, this semester was our first semester at BU.
Okay, so the classes that you're taking, are you two in the same classes?
We're in very similar classes, yes.
Okay, but not necessarily in the same classroom all the time.
Not necessarily in the same classroom.
Okay, but you do have classes together in the same classroom.
Yes.
So in those classes, do you feel more comfortable expressing your beliefs on any topic because you have your brother with you to kind of support you, whether just by physically being there or by being able to speak up if someone tries to kind of attack you for your beliefs?
Um, that's a very good question. I I okay, I wouldn't say that. Okay, let's say my brother wasn't there. I'm not scared to speak my mind. That I Even without him there, even with people in my dorm floor, stuff like that, I'm not scared. I think it's pretty obvious that I'm a little bit different politically than everyone else. I've spoken to a couple people about it just on nice, rational terms and just discussions. I'm not scared. It's just that I don't want to risk anything potentially for a career, for anything like that. If my brother was there, I don't even think it would make a difference because okay, it's two versus a professor or it's two versus an entire classroom, but I don't think it's worth the grade risk. I don't think it's worth, God forbid, the professor thinking any differently of you. Like right now, we have very good relationships with the professors. They know that we're observant Jews, but I wouldn't really emphasize the point that we might be a little bit different politically than anyone else because it's not really worth it. If it was like a debate class or something, then maybe. But in a class like it is now, just a liberal arts curriculum, I don't even think it's worth it.
And even on the Jewish front, like explaining, like my twin said, like I would not want to have an entire class period devoted to me speaking about Judaism, because to be honest, it's none of their business. It's something private between and myself and my brother and himself and yourself. So it's not that we're scared to speak our beliefs. It's also, beliefs are meant to be for yourself, and you're not trying to make people convert to your beliefs. It's more supposed to be for yourself personally.
Yeah, that for the Judaism part, I totally agree. I think that
Yeah.
no Jew owes anybody an explanation. I mean, for me, I'm fine with talking about even my religious beliefs because I don't know, that's just my thing, but I totally understand people who aren't. And I'm with political beliefs, it gets a little tricky, but no, I totally understand that. Are there any topics for you guys that are kind of that make you draw the line? You're like, you know what, I have to talk, I have to speak up because this is something, like for me it's Israel. For me, if there's something blatantly wrong that the professor is teaching about Israel, I will speak up because that for me is like that red line issue. Is there an issue like that for you guys?
For me, Israel has never came up in conversation. I don't know if I would personally be very, very bold about it like you. But for me, the thing that when it comes up, I automatically and immediately go against it is when professors say the Bible was edited, and when professors say certain things about Jude, because we learned Judaism in one of our classes. We read the Old Testament and things like that. And when they mention things about Judaism that they do not know anything about, I would never do this publicly to them, but I have gone up to professors and said, listen, this specific thing that you said, I'm an observant Jew, and I think it's this way. And they know when I say I think it's this way that you're Jewish, so you know, and I'm just a teacher and I'm gonna learn from that. But they're also very, very, very open with learning more and things like that, because the good part is they know themselves that just like we're not perfect, they're not perfect either, and they're supposed to learn from other people. So with regard to that, I would personally say that when professors say things that fundamentally go against my religion because we believe that the Bible was not edited, then that draws a line where we need to stand up for what we believe in. And it's happened unfortunately a few times, but I think now everything is good because they know. But yeah, so especially like a young student being in college.
Just also, if I can also answer the question from my point of view,
Yeah,
while I
please.
haven't really, yeah, I haven't really been exposed to anything about Israel majorly other than just like a comment in a chat in a classroom. But definitely it's more about if you feel prepared and if the classroom's an open space. In several classrooms it might be an open space, but I might not feel prepared to speak about Israel. But if someone says that Israel's an apartheid state, god forbid, or Israel is ethnically cleansing the Palestinian population, that's just so blatantly wrong that I will raise my hand and say, you're just, the classroom isn't a place for just misinformation and just saying the wrong thing and just trying to brainwash people into your beliefs. It's a place where everyone can speak. That even ties into the political argument we were having before. Everyone should be able to speak their mind. If you're wrong about something, then it's a nice discussion that you have where someone raises their hand that's more knowledgeable on it and says, no, you're wrong. Let's say the population growth of Palestinians is happening, so they're just doing a bad job at ethnic cleansing. Like, what do you mean? That's something like a pushback you can say in a classroom. But thank God I haven't really had to experience it. With religion also, sometimes the professors just don't like to get involved because I think maybe they're just following a curriculum or something. So it's sort of like, for example, if they were talking about the Bible, they would say, we're only going to talk about the Bible for 1 week. Let's just get through this. Something like that in their minds, maybe.
Right.
So they're not really, yeah.
Yeah, no, and anytime I think that a controversial topic like that is brought up, one that is knowingly controversial, not one that is controversial to conservative students, but then liberal students think it's kind of a given. It's religion for sure. And even sometimes Israel, it's kind of like the professors don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but they have to for whatever curriculum they have. So they kind of just like go through it in one class and kind of get it over with. But yeah, no, I understand that. I kind of to, I guess, wrap it up, how would you suggest professors kind of keep their political biases out of the classroom, and what can conservative or students in general who experience political bias do to kind of combat this college culture of intolerance, really.
So uh, we do have course evaluations. I'll just let everyone in the public know I didn't rate my professors on political beliefs. I didn't even mention the fact that they mentioned politics. Um, I just think that in general, professors are in a very unique position where they're sort of there's a word for this that I actually had to use in high school debate before. It's a word where the professors take the spot of parents in the classroom. Teachers have a very, very unique power where all the students, especially younger students, so it doesn't really 100% apply to college, but in general, a lot of teachers have the power to change the opinions of future leaders. And that's why, in my opinion, look, there's several things that professors just have to mention, like racism is just not okay, a lot of things like that, but not like racism is just not okay. That's one perfect example. Feel free to believe in whatever you believe in. That's also another example. Things like that, it should be really emphasized in the classroom. And I generally don't think professors should comment on anything political that's beyond just a certain level, like presidential administrations, policies. It's unless you're in specifically a politics class or an IR class, there's no reason why a history professor has to mention it, because all it does is just alienate maybe half of the student population and create tension in the classroom. Unless someone can really show to me, like right now, if you were to push back and say a genuine reason why a professor would have to mention politics, then I don't think it belongs in the classroom, especially in a historical or apolitical class.
So what's
I,
that level though? Like, how do we determine that? Because I feel like many different students, liberal students, conservative students, are going to have different opinions as to what that level should be. So what is our benchmark there?
I think I look, I did no research, but the message that I'm getting from the professors and the vibe that I'm getting is that this isn't them. This is coming from higher ups. I think that like because it's like scripted sort of, meaning that they're all saying the same thing. Let's say, for example, after the George Floyd, after the trial of Derek Chauvin, they all said the same thing pretty much. It was like scripted basically. I think that it's coming from the higher ups, the deans of colleges and stuff like that, where they're saying you have to talk about these topics. So if students that feel uncomfortable, it's, by the way, it could even be people on the left that their professors agree with them, that they just think talking about politics is just a waste of time in a history class. You're here to learn. You're spending so much money to learn. So if that can happen and students can unite and just speak to the deans about potentially getting rid of these political arguments and discussions in the classroom, it can go a very long way. This can only come from the higher ups. It can't come from specific professors.
and I think that the way that professors can stop the politics in the classroom is by not just simply not bringing it up, and they have to make the curriculum set up in a way that politics won't come up in conversation. And it's very unfortunate that it happens like this, but in actual everyday conversations, like, we could speak about politics all day and I would love to. I'm a very, very open guy. Like, I'm not so far on either side. I'm like in the middle, kind of like I could do anything. But I'm saying in the classroom, when I'm trying to learn, for the professor to keep on bringing up certain policies that just have nothing to do with what we're learning, that I draw the line there. Because not only does it make a lot of people in the classroom on both sides of the aisle uncomfortable, but also it hinders our learning ability that we're paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for. So that's really my opinion. And it shouldn't be so hard for professors just not to speak about it, because they can go home and speak about it with their family. They can go home and they can they can speak to students. If students want to speak about it, they can do it directly. They can join clubs to speak about it on campus with other students. Like, they don't need to do it in my humanities class or my rhetoric class or something like that and speak about politics. There's no place for that.
That's yeah. So I think generally we're both in agreement here that like me and my brother, I just think generally professors just shouldn't get involved. It's definitely coming from higher ups. That's the message that I'm getting from them. So if the higher ups can basically say it's just not allowed, things like that. In general, this becomes a political organization. If it's just constantly people working for the organization talking about politics, it's a place for learning and education. It's not really a place for, not, I wouldn't call it brainwashing, because they are talking about stuff that are important, but it's not a place for just political discussions in a history class.
But what about those professors that see these issues not necessarily as political? What if they say, well, this isn't political, it's about being moral, it's about doing the right thing, it's about being ethical. then what do you do? Because they don't see those issues as political the same way that we do. So just to tell them not to talk about politics, for them, it's not politics. For them, it's doing the right thing.
I don't think a single professor might say to themselves, I'm going to go to the classroom and speak about this because I think it's a moral thing. But he or she knows that half the classroom, if not more than half the classroom, think that it's the most divisive political argument in the world. Bringing up, let's say, for example, bringing up the state of Israel and saying that it's ethnically cleansing the Palestinians, they could say, oh, that's a moral argument. But the professor knows that more than half of the classroom and the Jews in the classroom all have a very, very political different opinion. And with that also, like, there are racism is extremely important to speak about and to try to get rid of. It's a very, very big thing in America, and it's unfortunate. It's all over the world and it's rampant everywhere. Jews suffer from anti-Semitism, which is one of the biggest. But I don't want to be sitting in a class, and thank God we're able to speak about this openly because we're not a white male or a white female. We actually have a Jewish background, which is very, very, it makes us get oppressed a lot. So I think that I wouldn't want to be sitting in my class learning about whatever we learn about in CGS, and then the professor to be speaking about Jews being oppressed for like 45, 50 minutes, and then we just leave the class. I feel like I'm a zoo animal now because that's all they've been speaking about. So I think that it might be a moral thing, it might be, but there's a time and place for a moral thing. And when you're learning a class and the class course description is saying whatever, let's say like the discovery of America up until the 1800s, and there's no place in that for racism in America in 2021 or 2020, because that, or like coronavirus, and the president's now speaking about coronavirus and the State of the Union and things like that.
I just generally, I just generally think that also morality, there's obviously a general sense of what morality is. For example, don't kill, don't kidnap, don't things like that. That's just basic. Everyone believes that that's not okay. But also I have other moral things that I do. For example, I want to work, I want to have kids, I want to have a family. I believe that the only way to be successful is to have family. That's moral to me, in my opinion. My opinion, morals is settling in a family and not having children out of wedlock. That's moral to me. I think that if you do that, you might just be crazy. I don't necessarily believe in this. I'm just saying, people different senses of morality. The fact that the professor's morality matters than anyone else's is just a disservice to the students, because at the end of the day, you're going into a world where you might have a boss that differs from you politically. I'm sorry to pop anyone's bubble that's listening to this podcast, but that might happen. And the fact that college is just one huge bubble of just one view, because every professor is talking about it, and even the professors that disagree are forced to talk about it, that might not be beneficial towards the students. I don't know. I'm an elementary level college kid. I'm not sure, but that's my opinion. I tend to think that someone's going to really pop your bubble in the future when you're in the corporate world and your boss is saying something outright positive about, let's say, for example, a Republican president, and you were taught in college that he was a neo-Nazi racist.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the key point, is that we need to recognize that we all have different definitions of morality, and to automatically assume that one person's moral compass is the same as another person's moral compass is incorrect, and also can cause some damage. I mean, of course, there's a bottom line and there is a base morality that I think we can all agree on in the Judeo-Christian values of this country. But outside of that, when there are a lot of different factors at play, we have to recognize that, it's not just a given that this is a moral issue. There are other things to talk about. But yeah, thank you guys so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Problem.
Best of luck.